Hi, I'm Annie Schlesinger, and this again is the next chapter. And the topic today I know is a little unusual. We're going to be talking about the issue of death. And I went back to school 25 years ago to become a medical social worker. It was kind of the AIDS epidemic, and really with the idea of working with hospice after I graduated. I think it really came out of the fact that I felt my father did not have a good death, and I probably over-romanticized it a little bit at the time. But when I got to my first job at a hospice, I was where I thought that that's what we were going to be talking about, was going to be kind of planning how this chapter ends for everybody. But did that come true? Absolutely not. It was a physician-driven organization, and still is. And you know, if the reason this is important right now is that if we are not careful, the docs will keep wanting to treat us for whatever it is, and we need to think about it before it happens, so that we know when too much is enough. I'm just going to hold this up for a minute. This is a book that won a Pulitzer Prize called The Denial of Death, and he's really talking about our culture and how we can't talk about death. And so we're going to try to weave this topic in and out of the next chapter. And I have today someone who I think is really qualified to talk about this, Margaret Dawedeit. I didn't pronounce that right, did I?
Dawedeit.
Dawedeit, okay. She is the minister at the Peru Church. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk a little bit about her ministry there. And then we will really get into the topic of how you deal with your clients. One, when they're ill or not, and how this topic gets revisited. So Margaret, take it away.
Okay. So I too went back to school at a later age. I went back when I was 41 and went to seminary and ended up getting kicked out of seminary, which was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
Because I could go off and do what I wanted to do myself. And that's what I did. I have a church up on the mountain, the Peru Church. They were getting ready to close the doors, and I said, wait, let me try. And they let me try, and not only do they let me try, they let me do whatever I want to do. They trust me, and
so they were going to close that church.
Absolutely. They were in the process of closing it when I said, well, I have nowhere else to go and nothing else to do, let me try. And so it's been tremendously successful. But I work with elders a lot up there, a lot. Vermont has well, what would you say? The more elderly people here than I think any other state in the union.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's emptying out quick. But
all
that
these
gives
good athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn. But it gives me a lot of opportunity to be in these kinds of situations, and people who have just gotten a terrible diagnosis, or people who have a prolonged illness, which is the most difficult thing. I'm really proud that in Vermont we now have physician-assisted suicide, so that we have some say over it. But to your point, Annie, you're right, that people are afraid of death. And they will do anything to deny it, anything to work around it. A lot of their everyday actions are reflections of their fear of death. You know, wanting to keep their bodies in tone as possible, so that they can live here longer and longer. And they are.
Yeah. But I think that is also important in that, because we are living so much longer, then it is what do we do to keep the quality of our life going, as opposed to just watching the downhill slide with ourselves. And I mean, Margaret, I used to walk in, I had a hard time even saying the word as a medical social worker. I mean, that was my job. And, it's just, you just got such negative energy around it.
I still put it in there. I walk into a sick room and say, "Well, what do you think about you dying?" I also, one of the things I'm famous for is I will get into bed with you.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
While you're dying or before you're dying, and I will hold you while you get ready to make your transition. And what the transition is, even though I am a Christian minister, I don't know for sure what happens, right? But I tell them that one of two things happens. Either you get to either something or nothing. All right. So if something happens and you go on to the next level of consciousness and you're with the angels and the saints, yay, that's great. And if nothing happens, what do you care? You're dead. There's no consciousness. So this holding on, this clutching life is not necessary. And we need to talk more about that in our culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing that I was schooled to sort of talk about with everyone is kind of what happens at the beginning of my film here, where you see me as a little girl growing up, and it's called Life Review. And it's a great sort of jumping off point for people because it really gives them a chance to look back in their life and kind of reevaluate. What I found often is they're much harder on themselves than probably they should be, and that often within what they think they failed at, there have been all of these wonderful gifts that led them on to other things. And this is, I'm sure, an area that you talk with people.
Well, that's the spiritual path as well. That we come here with a purpose and a mission and work to do, and sometimes that's pretty gruesome work. Sometimes we have to do things that are not viewed as being gentle and kind, but that's part of it. That's part of the whole thing.
Right.
Of your whole life experience.
And helping your clients at that time to see that. That's what's the valuable part of it, I think. When you were talking about getting into bed with a client, Bergman has a film, and it may have been the two sisters, I don't know, but anyway, there's one of his female characters is dying, and the maid gets in bed. She takes her clothes off, holds this woman to her bosom, as she did when this woman was a little girl. And how wonderfully consoling it was. It makes me kind of get goosebumps just thinking, why don't you tell me a little bit about sort of, do you get called in when someone generally gets a sort of terminal diagnosis?
Often I do. Often I get called in and I've never met the people before.
Wow.
Yeah. They know that I am hospice oriented and that I don't believe in leaving people in hospitals. Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Great.
No.
So you go.
I'll go wherever people need me to go. And console them and console their family. I work with their families to get ready. I'm working with a family right now where the patient has been in bed for 2 years.
Oh my God.
2 years. And
I can't imagine because I did that kind of work, but
and no pharmaceuticals are involved. She is just working out some sort of energy that she has to still give forth on this earth. There's no reason why she's lasted so long, except that she's still here, right? And you have to honor that. And listen and learn from the lessons that they give, because inevitably they start telling their stories. And inevitably things like regret start coming out. And I think once that energy is removed and moves on, they're much more likely to have a beautiful, pleasant death.
Wow. So
and
that's the good work we can do.
That is the good work we can do. There's nothing more that we really can do if you want to go the hospice way. And the hospice way is no medical intervention. It is listening to their stories. It's not the pharmaceuticals and getting hooked up and being dragged from place to place. And it's a peaceful death.
Right.
And
the clarity that happens. when I think of my own sort of life, and when I think of facing the ending, do I want to be totally numbed out with sort of heavy painkillers? I mean, I don't want to be in pain, but I would want to be as clear as I could, I think, at that point, to make that transition.
Yeah, both of my parents dropped dead, along with a grandfather and an uncle, and it was a shocking revelation. You know, I was only 25 when my father died, but I look back now and I think, how bright was he?
Yeah.
How brilliant.
To do that.
You know, if you're going to die, go out big, you know, make a big splash. And
This is a funny one. My husband's father died in a poker game.
Perfect. Did he win the hand?
Yes, and they said it was the best hand he had ever had. That's so funny, you know. What do you think? Do you think we can orchestrate when we leave?
Yes.
You do.
I do.
Now, I have had a show with my sister-in-law saying that she was convinced that her mother died within 2 days, and she said, I looked at her and I saw her decide that she did not want to be a burden to anyone.
Because she had released the fear. That's what allowed her to do that.
Oh, wow.
That once you let go, you know, and say, all right, thy will be done, whatever it is, I'm ready for it. Well, you see it all the time, I'm sure. You can walk into a room and people will say, this is not living.
Absolutely.
This is not living.
Yes.
This is mortuary. I mean, it's morbid, it's deterioration. It's not living.
Exactly.
You know.
That's why that's why this program is important.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You know, just bringing this topic up so that people feel less fearful around it.
Well, and I think also having a spiritual life, whatever that looks like, is also tremendously important. Because even if it just helps you get over the hump, you know, then it is worth it. Do you know that Steve Jobs, you know his 6 last words he said?
No, what?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Is that right? Oh, incredible.
And here he was, probably the least spiritually oriented, or at least Christian oriented guy that you could possibly imagine. But here he was having this fantastic, he saw colors. Well, you know, as you know, in the death process, most people see colors and people coming to get them, and there's a lot of activity in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Steve Jobs was not the one who I thought would bring that to us, and yet he is.
But
he's the one who...
He came from California.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I went to school out there, and I can tell you it is. Woo! Particularly Berkeley.
Exactly. I had an experience, and I will just paraphrase it quickly, where this was a hospice nurse who sort of pulled herself out of the system and wanted to die in her own way. And so she didn't want to be connected with a hospital or whatever. Her biggest fear was that she had Mets to the spinal column, is that she would be comatose and in the hospital, unable to move, and then would have to.
Oh, that's the worst, right?
Yeah. There is a book called Deathing, which is, it's kind of an ooey book where you learn how to pull up the different energy systems in your body. And she had a significant other who, he was pretty gifted, I think. He was able to see auras. And anyway, and that did happen. She was in the hospital, paralyzed there, couldn't talk, okay? She's there, I think, about 4 nights. I get a phone call from him in the middle of the night, and he tells me, he said, I went back with Judith, and I took her hands, and I said to her, he described it like a sitting on the edge of her bed and saying, honey, we have planned this. You have practiced to do this.
You know how to do this.
You know how to do this. And together, they did it. And she died at like 2 a.m. in the morning. And the incredible thing, I had asked her, it was springtime, and I had asked her the question, Judith, when do you think you're going to die? And she said, I think it's going to be around Easter time. And she said, and I see snow falling. And I said, what? I said, it doesn't figure. Well, after I got this phone call in the middle of the night, I went out to my living room and sat down, turned on the lights, and I turned on the outdoor light.
And there was snow.
The snow was falling. I mean, it really just, I talk about goosebumps and you know, those kind of scenarios. Not that we can always have that kind of experience, but, you know, it's like we need to know that somebody did.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that if we decide that we want something a little more peaceful or a little bit more unusual, that it's not impossible.
Yeah. But I reiterate that I think if you can get rid of the fear, then you don't have that horrible departure. You don't have the the demons coming after you.
Right.
If you can just let go and let God and let nature take its course, it's a beautiful journey.
You're right. And think what a relief it will be when our bodies.
To get out of the body.
Yeah. Right. Our bodies
Won't
are
it be wonderful?
so tired.
It's so much upkeep.
Yes.
Constant.
I know.
You know, it's
and that
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and that body's working hard for us, and that's right. Think of all that time we try to exercise and do those things.
Paint your nails, the whole bit.
Yeah. Right, exactly. God. Oh my. So when you go into someone's house, do you talk about what they envision their destiny?
Absolutely.
Like?
Yeah.
And do they go?
No, not at all. They always start off with being terrified.
Yeah.
Because it's a very frightening thing to get a diagnosis that, you have 6 months left to live. That's very, very, terrifying. But typically within a few visits, we are talking deep. We are, who do you think you're going to see? How do you think it's going to feel? What do you want it to feel like? That's the other thing is our minds and spirits are so strong that we can make manifest what we think is going to happen.
Now that's, I think, the key.
I believe that. Yes. My sister's dog died recently, and she was extremely hysterical. Very, very,
Not
very.
A little hysterical.
No,
extremely.
no, like airplane tickets. Okay. And, it was like calling the airlines, like, how fast can I get down there to her? So while the dog was dying, Chrissy kept saying, "Go to Grandma." Our mother, go to Grandma, go to Grandma. You go find Grandma, go find Grandma. And it gave Chrissy such peace. It helped her mourning, cut it in half to know that even if it's only on a imaginary level, that her dog was with our mother. They weren't alone. They had each other.
And I think our animals can teach us. I mean, I feel like my other Springer Spaniel, that he was like lying in that little sofa there, looking at me, saying, "Mom, come on, help me."
Yeah. That's what Jack did as well. It was like, I've done all I can, Mom. It's time to go.
It's time to go. And I knew that's what he was saying.
Well, look, animals will go into the woods. We see it all the time up here.
Right.
They just go and go to nature, get underneath some leaves and
do their thing.
Yeah.
I think of the movie Little Big Man when Dustin Hoffman just walks off into the wilderness and says, "This is my time to die."
Yeah, today's a good day to die. Today's a good day.
And then you see him walking back in.
Apparently it wasn't.
Yeah, oops, I made a mistake. The other thing which we're sort of bringing up with all of this is something that is so important in life and dying is a sense of humor about it all. I mean, sometimes it just gets absolutely ridiculous, and our obsession with our bodies and the perfection of them, and to be able to laugh about it.
But also at funerals, I encourage people to laugh at funerals. I encourage them to look at the silly things and talk about all parts of the person who has passed. Not just he was so perfect. He also has some flaws because he's human.
Exactly.
That just comes with the package.
The other thing that I think is important to mention before we conclude talking about this is that, the medical profession, and I should say, of course, has lots of wonderful things, but they want us safe. They want us safe. They do not want clients to fall down on the floor. They do not want them to roll out of bed, or they don't want them to be going upstairs and falling down. Well, you know, I lived through that with my husband, and I, in the end, let him do what he was willing to do. And, you know,
Brave.
he never fell on the stairs, you know, and he was hell-bent that that was the way he was going to do it. And fine. He lived, you
Salute.
know, the night before he fell and broke his hip, all my family was here, and they were all boogieing in the living room. He stood up, did his boogie, you know, fell back in the chair, but had a great time doing it. And so we want to think of quality of life.
Absolutely.
If we are the caregivers for somebody.
And
for
quality of
ourselves.
death as well.
That's right. And
Quality of death.
Exactly. And although we can't always orchestrate it, you know, we can do the best we can in what's important to us. Okay, so tell me a little bit about if you've ever experienced a situation where not only you saw someone sort of making a spiritual transition, but that the family was in on it.
Yeah. This was, we had a gentleman out in, up on the mountain, I should just say, and he is a foursquare atheist. Scientist, God does not exist, don't talk to me about it. He was very kind to me, but you know, he never stepped foot inside the church unless there was a funeral going on. Well, he got several different kinds of cancer, including esophageal, which you know is very, very painful. And he lived about 1.5 years, and then his process began. When his process began, he went to bed, and his grandmother came to see him.
You mean spiritually or?
Spiritually. And he's in bed, and he's talking to all these people up on the ceiling and down over here. He had a set of twins that but the room started getting more and more crowded. All of these people, you know, there's a song, All My Memories Gather Round Me. I think it's the song Precious Memories. And that's what it was like. You know, his children were there and his grandchildren, but so were everyone else. His wife, who had passed away a long time previous to this, and you know, and his and his ancestors, and he didn't question any of it. He said, Grandma, Oma needs a chair, bring a chair over. And the twins need to go to the bathroom, so someone needs to take them to the bathroom. And the family went along with everything that he said and everything that he wanted, you know. So he gets to the last night of his life. And he is really happy because he is leaving, right?
Does he think he knows that that's it?
Oh yes, I think he very much knew that he would that was it. Yeah, and we get to the last night, and his daughter-in-law, decides that she's going to go to heaven with him. And she said,
she's a living being.
She's a living being. She's living, breathing. She's for real.
Okay.
And she has been breathing and meditating this entire time very, very deeply.
Okay.
And the gentleman passes away, and the woman, his daughter-in-law, goes into this trance. Wow. And in the trance, she went to heaven to bring the gentleman there, right? And she said, it is so beautiful. It smells great. She was there. This wasn't an illusion she was having, or she was making up to make the gentleman feel better. No, she was there with him. She had promised him that if she could, that she would go and install him in his room in heaven, and you know, on the spiritual level. And it's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Okay. And then when she came back,
did you have trouble getting her to come back, or what happened? I mean,
she did not want to come back.
How long was she gone? I mean,
well, she had no time. She had no sense of time and space whatsoever. But the people who were still on Earth said that it was about an hour while she was in this deep, deep trance and was clearly not there. So, but I want to share that when she came back, our local doctor, who does house calls, came to the house, pronounced him dead, and then the family said, well, what do we do now? And he opened up the medical bag and takes out a big bottle of champagne, and he said, we celebrate a life well lived.
Oh, what a wonderful, that's a wonderful
That's what he brought. He didn't bring any Valium. He didn't bring any, morphine. He brought champagne for those who were staying behind.
I hope that's my doctor.
Right? I'll let you know afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that's the doctor we all want.
Yeah, it is the doctor that we want. Someone who's going to go along with it. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Quit milking us.
No more tests.
Yeah, no more tests.
I mean, my husband was a person who really grew up loving his doctor, and he thought he was going to love going down to the emergency room. After having been there 3 or 4 times, it gets to be an old picture because they're wanting to do the same tests over and over again. It takes you forever to get out of there.
Well, people want their doctor to do something,
Yes.
even if you can't do anything. Maybe give saline or something, so they can see manifestly that something is being done for them.
Yes.
Even if it's just helping them get to heaven,
Right.
helping them to the next realm.
Yeah. So that's right. How many doctors talk about that they were never schooled in terms of end-of-life issues? I have a friend who's an oncologist, and he tried to. He brought me this actual movie, which is about someone who orchestrates his own death and has a party. It's called the Barbarian Invasions, and I will put it on the screen. But he tried to show that to his med students. I mean, they weren't interested. They don't want it, they wanted to get, what's the cure for this? And then let me leave. I mean, rather than how can we make this more meaningful than it is?
How can it become a gift?
Yeah, exactly, for both the family and the person. Yeah. So I think we've probably sort of about done our time. Anything else you want to add about this?
No, I would just, if I could send something out into the world, it would be that volunteering for hospice is one of the greatest things that you can do. It is a relationship and an intimacy, and necessary.
Yes.
We really need people to come in and all hospice volunteers do is sit by your bedside, make you feel better, and sing you a song, and snuggle with you, whatever it is that they need. And it's not difficult. The training is very easy, and I hope a lot of people will consider joining.
And meaningful. I remember
meaningful,
before I decided to go back to school and get my degree, it was the hospice volunteer training that I did first.
Me too.
And then one day I went to, there was a conference for the volunteers, some kind of a luncheon thing, and I remember the woman who was the keynote speaker, I went up like that and said, what degree do I need if I were going to do this kind of work? And she said an MSW, and that was it for me. It was just so important and meaningful to me compared to sort of what I had been doing. And the time was right, so,
Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, we've all had these major pivotal moments in our life, and we want to respect it. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Yeah, and, this is a topic which I really think that we need to sort of, as I said, sort of wind back to all the time and remember, and so that we can make this as meaningful as we want.
Yes, yeah.
And
remove the fear.
and remove the fear. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I know, it makes me want to trundle up to the mountain every Sunday.
Okay.
Okay, that's right.